This was the Amaryllis challenge from last year.
I could see it like doing the Michael Jackson lean.
Amaryllis and chill.
Blubs. You'll find that in the blubs department.
It should say, excellent, this is in Dutch.
What is this?
That is yellow and orange.
This is white. I'm just kidding. Welcome back to the Helpful Gardeners podcast. Well, this week we are getting into some of the winter bulbs that have started coming into the greenhouse. And this is always an exciting time because usually we're kind of cutting down on the gardening, but just because it's heading into winter doesn't mean you can't keep going. So obviously one of the most iconic Christmassy type, oh, I just said Christmas. Oh,
it's a little early. We'll dial it back. Well, we're in November. We can broach the subject. We don't have to go full ball. But
exactly. And if you were to do an amaryllis in time for Christmas, you have to start thinking about it right now, right? So this plant is one of the largest of the winter bulbs. It usually has like a nice sturdy stem, a nice big bulb. You have one out of the box. Yeah,
this is my little show and tell. That's just a single bulb, and that put out 4 huge trumpet flowers.
They come in white. We have this beautiful dark red one called Red Pearl.
I like that one too.
Yeah, it's very nice and dark.
I think they've even got a candy striped one.
Yeah, I think I saw. Oh, I didn't even bring it up here, but I have seen that one.
Yeah, the all different, like there's pinks, different shades of reds, the candy stripe. There's tons of different varieties.
Yeah, and we're going to get more into your amaryllis a little bit later on when we get into our more tips of growing bulbs, because your story behind this one's pretty interesting. Because normally when you think about Christmas flowers, you think about like poinsettia, right?
Yeah.
So the amaryllis is really gaining popularity though. What I found interesting was its ties to historical. I think last year when we touched based on amaryllis, you were talking about the Greek mythology.
Yeah, there was a whole, yeah.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap that, the Greek mythology tie is to a nymph who fell in love with Altio, a shepherd. Amaryllis sought the oracle of Delphi, who told her to go to the shepherd's door every night for 30 nights and pierce her heart with a golden arrow. When Altio opened the door, finally, there was a crimson flower sprung from the blood of Amaryllis's heart. Very tragic.
I just think after you pierced your heart the first night, you wouldn't be able to get there.
It's Greek.
I know, but just pointing out some things they may have made. I mean, they did also invent medicine, maybe because of stories like that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But it also has biblical ties to the Christmas story, tied to St. Joseph's staff. So a lot of that connection to Christmas time of the year as well.
It also shows the age of this beautiful flower.
Yes.
Now, granted, we've obviously hybridized it and worked on it and mixed it up and changed it into all of these wonderful varieties. But it just shows like these flowers have been around for thousands of years.
Exactly. Next up is hyacinth. This one also comes in a lot of different colors as well.
Yeah.
So you have the purple, nice deep color, the yellow.
Oh, the I think it's white.
Oh,
well,
that is totally white.
It's called l'innocence.
I don't know colors.
The innocence.
Ooh,
no, it's not that you don't know colors. In your defense, they did call a purple onion a red onion.
What is this?
That is yellow and orange.
This is white.
Gotcha!
But yeah, so hyacinth also comes in a lot of different colors, and this one is so polarizing. I went and kind of took a poll downstairs, and I think more people didn't like the scent than liked the scent. I heard that the different colors will produce a different scent. Now, I don't know how true that is, but typically the whiter ones will produce a more pungent scent. So that's something, if you like the smell of hyacinth, maybe try that out this year.
I love hyacinths and I love the smell. However, I do find it can be overpowering in small spaces. So if you are going to do a hyacinth and you're not sure, maybe make sure you've got like a bigger, more airier room to put it in.
Yes.
As opposed to like maybe a small office.
Yeah.
That would be good. And if you love the smell, you're like, I can't get enough, then of course move it to a smaller office.
Yeah.
But just in case you're like, that is a little bit strong.
Yeah. There's something really interesting about the hyacinth bulb, and I'm going to be very careful. because this is what it looks like. So it's kind of this little purple bulb.
All red if you're talking about onions.
Red purple bulb. A red bulb.
Bread?
Red bulb.
Red bulb?
That doesn't sound good.
No, a bulb.
A bulb. But what I found out when working with these, more so on the floor, is to be very careful to not touch the outside, so the papery bit, and then touch your face. Because it can really produce sort of like a rash.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember getting very itchy after touching these. So if you're touching them, don't do like me. Wear gloves if you can, or just be sure to wash your hands afterwards.
Oh, interesting. Because I've planted not indoors.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the difference. Or again, some people react, some don't.
Maybe.
I didn't know that because I've planted a lot of hyacinth bulbs outdoors.
Yeah.
I plant
You've never gotten...
No, I've never noticed it on my hand or my face.
Do you usually wash your hands?
Not when I'm in the middle of planting. I would finish doing all of the planting first.
And do you touch your face?
I imagine if I'm outside, I'm
Yeah,
brushing
maybe.
hair out of my face and whatnot.
Interesting. So maybe it is sort of like, so there is a potential that you could...
But also my hand would have been covered in soil, so there's...
protective barrier.
That's, because I mean, if it made you itch, it made you itch, but interesting.
Yeah, but here's another interesting point, is that you can also grow hyacinth in water.
Yep.
So you can get these really cool hyacinth vases, and they're created in a way, I'm going to ruin it, where... you drop them in, and then they are tapered so that they hold the bulb, but then you can put water underneath and then grow them in water.
And apparently the water isn't meant to touch the bulb.
Oh, I didn't know that. So just the roots.
Yeah, well, so when you start them like that, if that's the bottom of your bulb, your water should be like 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch away, and the roots grow into it. You don't want the water on the bulb.
Okay. Yeah. Very important actually to pass on that note. Oh yeah, you see. Okay. So next up we have paper whites, and paper whites are like mini daffodils.
Yeah.
This is a white one. No, I'm just kidding.
It's so funny that you pick it up, it's paper whites, and the ones you pick up are yellow. I'm like, okay, my brain, what are you doing to me here?
So paper whites.
And paper yellows.
Yeah, and paper yellows. Come in white and yellow. And I love these because they grow in bunches.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're getting one big show-stopping flower. You get just sort of a little cluster of little ones.
And they look delicate too.
They do.
Where, the hyacinth and the amaryllis, what we talked about, was the large, bold flower. They look like little mini daffodils.
Yeah.
They've got a gentle fragrance.
Yeah.
Jenny loves paper whites.
Yeah, and here's something interesting about the paper white. They have Chinese cultural ties.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, said to bring good luck and prosperity. So you might, if you have, somebody who is in that culture, you might notice paper whites in their traditions.
Oh, wow. Okay, yep.
Okay, also, what I find interesting is we have crocus. And you're like, say what? That's a spring flower.
Yeah.
So why is that
that's
a
spring
winter
flower?
Yeah. So why do we see crocus around this time of year? What makes them different from the ones that we buy?
So here's the thing. You can grow bulbs whenever you want.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, so we had a ton of difficulty when my parents moved to Calgary growing bulbs, and Mum loved her daffodils.
Mm-hmm.
So Dad forced the bulbs. So all you have to do is the bulbs just need a dormant period.
Mm-hmm.
So really, you can make bulbs grow at any time you want, as long as you do the dormancy, which I understand is tricky because of timing and keeping them dormant and how long they're dormant for, and blah blah blah.
So you're saying that if I had this leftover daffodil that I forgot to plant because I forgot about it,
Yeah.
I can't plant this and it'll grow. It needs to go through a dormancy period, which is why we plant them now.
Yep, exactly. You plant them now. They go through the cold and the dark.
Yeah.
Because some bulbs, bulbs that are more tropical, amaryllis, obviously from Greek times. So from Greece, if that's what they're mentioning, Mediterranean. You put that in a Calgary winter, it's not going to do good.
Mm-mm.
So they need dark and cool. But daffodils and tulips, they want that froze. Like they want it to be frozen cold, and that's how they come up.
Mm-hmm. But actually, let's go into that chilling period, because here are 8 tips for growing winter bulbs. Okay, tip number 1, that dormancy, just chill, right?
Yeah.
So ensure bulbs have undergone the chilling period. Now, if you go to your local garden center and they have winter blubs.
Blubs. Was that a mixture of bloom and bulb or blubs?
Blubs. You'll find that in the blubs department. Anyway, but so if you go to your local garden center, the ones that they have received in have gone through that dormancy period, so they're good. Like I say before, if you have some daffodil laying around that you just bought like a couple months ago, they haven't gone through that chilling period. So make sure that you get the right ones. This is where your amaryllis comes in, because this is not bought this year.
No, this was the amaryllis challenge from last year.
That is.
And
I'm so excited you did this.
Well, you challenged me. I've still got the massive poinsettia.
Yes!
Sure enough, shortly after Christmas, the flowers died off, so I deadheaded it and left it. And it was really, actually a beautiful plant.
Yeah.
It had 7 big, long, like maybe 2 foot, maybe a little bit more. Nice wide, maybe 2 inches wide, and they tapered off nice and round. Strong green leaves, really beautiful plant. Sure enough, must have been end of August, I want to say, I cut the last leaf off of it. And just slowly but surely, starting on the outside leaves going to the middle one, they started drooping and just browning and just kind of lying flat. So I trimmed them accordingly. Took the last one off, give the bulb one more good water, and then put it into its dormant period. And then I just brought it out last week, put in a little bit of fresh soil, freshened it up a bit, and now we wait and see.
Now it's doing things.
But I mean, it's still viable. The bulb is still firm. It's not. I was worried that I'd bring it out and it would be desiccated. If you ever picked up the daffodils from downstairs, you squeeze them and they just.
Like literally this one.
Yeah, there you go. So that one is done. Now that's old. It's totally dried out. So I kind of did what I would do in the garden with, say, a tulip or a daffodil, cut them back, make sure that they're well watered, and then you just kind of like, well, you're done until next year. Let it water. I let the soil dry, wrapped it up in a paper bag, let it go dormant, and now here we are. So it's still viable. The roots were beautiful and white and pliable. They weren't brittle. A little bit of fresh soil around the cocoa coir, a little bit of water. Nothing happening yet, but it's been 4 days, 5 days. So I'm not expecting too much to happen. So fingers crossed, I will keep you updated.
Yeah, we'll do like the amaryllis update 2024.
Yeah.
I love that. So number 1 is making sure that your bulbs are properly chilled and have gone through dormancy.
He couldn't be more chilled, yo.
Yeah.
Put a pair of sunglasses on him. Yeah.
Just chill. No, you're like too much.
Amaryllis and chill.
I love that. Next up is timing. So a lot of folks come into Golden Acre and they're like, hey, I really want blooms for Christmas. So making sure that you're planting them at the right time so that you will be able to get them. Can we kind of go through the different winter bulbs? Because I imagine different winter bulbs will bloom at different times. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, you can. It's not what time they'll bloom. It's when do you want them to bloom, when you should start them. So you can have them all bloom together, but you may need to start them at different times.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So when you're looking at it, you kind of, like we say with everything, you kind of need to work backwards. Okay, like. When is it safe to plant? Well, 3 weeks after the last frost. You're like, well, how do I? So it should say, excellent, this is in Dutch. So I know hyacinths can take a little bit longer.
Oh, interesting.
Because you've got to put them in the vase. Then, even though they've been dormant, it will advise you, and this is from previous plantings. I can't remember the timing off the top of my head. I see too much of that. But it will recommend for like 7 to 10 days to so you take your little vase that you have over there, you put the water in it, you put the bulb at the correct height, then you put it in the dark. Okay, so somewhere warm and dark for 7 to 10 days. When you look at it, the roots should be in the water. Then you start letting it get some light. And then you're going to go into the active growth. So if you think about it, we've talked about this lots. It's almost like a seed germination.
Yeah.
So the root is going to come out first. Once that root is there, now it's pulling out moisture. It's like, hey, where are my leaves? Warmth and light. It's going to trigger that part. Yeah. So that's what you want to do with the hyacinth.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I was just kind of looking up like a little bit. So it's kind of typically around like 6 weeks. So really, if I think around now, you can really start to plant pretty much all of these, and then just making sure that you're following the rest of the tips, and then you should get blooms.
You should, and here's the thing as well, it's not an exact science.
Yeah.
you were saying one of your Christmas cactuses jumped the gun a little bit early.
You know.
Christmas cactus is like, hey, I'm here. You're like, not quite Christmas, but some years I've got blooms for Christmas. Other year it's either before or after.
Yeah.
So it's not, the growing is somewhat of an exact science. They need soil, they need light, blah, blah, blah. But the timing, you're going to get what you get. They might be early, they might be a bit late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so do your best.
Yep.
But
you can have the best chance following the directions.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said,
exactly, yeah. Okay, number 3, plant it the right way up and at the right depth. I know that seems like such a silly one, but I think I may have planted, I think I did an amaryllis last year, and I think I may have planted it a bit too deep.
Okay, fair.
You know, so let's talk about that. So let's start with your amaryllis, because typically when we talk about planting bulbs, we usually say put the soil completely over the bulb, but in this case we don't.
Yeah, no, for amaryllis, they only want they're almost like an avocado. They only want the bottom third covered. Hyacinths don't want to be in water at all. Okay, I believe paper whites need to be fully covered. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so...
And also roots down.
Yeah, and that is... because, and I get it, a lot of people, when they see a bulb like that, people think the pointy part goes down because it sticks into the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, oh, now I understand. Because I just always knew that was the way you do it. It sits on the bottom part. So normally most bulbs, hyacinths, that's hard to say, amaryllis, daffodils, paper whites, tulips, they all have, even garlic, they all have that point and then they go down. So even if there's no roots, they always sit on the flat part. They always sit on their butt.
Well, and sometimes, like right now, we have this little paper white, and I wish I could show the camera. It's kind of in its package, but sometimes you'll even start to see some of it growing.
Yeah.
So that's even a good indication, green is up.
Yeah, and there are some bulbs too as well that you may really have to examine. Crocus actually can be in that family where they're kind of flat on the top, flat on the bottom. There's no roots. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Normally it's wherever the paper or the fiber part covers the most, the root part should always be just a little different than the rest of it. That's the part that goes down.
Good tip. Number 4, sun.
Yeah.
These plants need a lot of sun. It's really hard in the wintertime when we have these shorter days.
Grow lights.
Yes, grow lights. Okay, let's talk about that, because especially for the amaryllis, it's a big bulb. It needs a lot of energy to be able to produce those big blooms.
It really does, yeah.
Yeah, so a grow light can really help, hey?
And, our friend Michael, he's Italian, and he moved to Calgary from Vancouver because he said, even though he comes from northern Italy, he's used to like Mediterranean lifestyle. And he said, even though it was minus 40, he could handle the sun better than 7 degrees and rain.
I believe it.
And he said he couldn't handle the grey and the rain. He'd rather it was cold and sunny.
Yeah.
Because then he could be inside, but at least the sunlight was good for him. Southern Alberta, Calgary, Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, whatnot, are the sunniest places in all of Canada. So even if you don't have a grow light, it's not in the budget for a grow light, whatever, get it in a south or a southwest window.
Yeah.
Make sure it's getting as much light as it can. If you don't have that, mine was sitting in my kitchen, which doesn't get a ton of light in the winter, but it had grow lights.
Yeah, and I think if you don't live in the sunniest places in the country, then grow lights, like we said last week, are very accessible now, very affordable, and you can get single ones that will just go into a single pot. So if this is all you got, then there's something for you. Adjustable ones too, so as your plant grows.
And even then, even if your plant gets too big for it, you can always lift it out and use strings or whatever it takes. But and I really liked that you said, especially ones like an amaryllis, it's easily 2 foot tall, if not taller. And you're expecting it to grow that fast in 6 to 8 weeks. It needs the food, and the food is the light. So get the light to them.
Can we also talk about like moving it towards the sun? So what I noticed last year, I didn't put my amaryllis in a window. I just sort of put it in the middle of our townhouse at the time. And then I could see it like doing the Michael Jackson lean. And it was like because they're so tall, leads us into our next point. Support structures might be needed for things like amaryllis. So things that we can talk about are like bamboo stakes, and just doing that little like MacGyver, trying to get that together.
Use a stake, a trellis.
Yes, we have such cool trellises too. I'm sure you can find them at your local garden center too, but we have this one company out of Airdrie, and they create like these really neat, what is it? I saw that we got a restock. They've got like mountain shapes and like when you think of trellis, you think of like just like the single
crisscrosses.
Yeah, exactly. Which has its place too. But if you're like bougie like me and you're want your inside plant to look kind of cool, like that's a really cool avenue.
And the company, the Spark and Bloom, woman-led company, they're amazing, and they come up with the designs. They make them by hand, and they are so. They've got new ones. They're constantly creating.
Yeah.
They came up with cats, butterflies. They've got bees. It's so there's so much fun you can have with it. Because what you said as well, I moved mine onto my kitchen table, dining room table, I should say, for Christmas Day. I had everybody over. Mum was there. Vicky was there. House full of kids, and we decorated the table. I put it on the table. Real showstopper. But then once Christmas was over, I moved it back to the lights.
Yeah.
Because once it starts, so here's the thing. After Christmas, and I cut the flowers off and I kept it alive, no problem. Spring came around, so I moved it away from the lights because now it was getting enough sunlight in the window. And I was like, oh, spring in the garden center, I am very busy. My plants got watered, and mine did the same thing just with the leaves. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. Once it's lent maybe 30 degrees, it doesn't matter how many times you rotate it, it's not really going to come back from that.
Okay, number 6, water sparingly. Okay, so obviously we just talked about how you can grow in soil, some bulbs you can grow in water. I think one of the most important things, let's start with the water one, because we need to make sure that the roots are continuously with water. We can't let them dry out. And as you mentioned, we can't have the water levels too high either because it can't be touching the bulb. So making sure that we are taking the bulb out and then watering it.
So water can touch the bulb, it can't sit in water.
Yes, but I just mean like you have a whole bulb here. Like I've definitely been that lazy where I haven't taken out the bulb and I've just like
and
it's also a mess. Can I add that? It's just not worth it. Like just lift it a little bit and then put your little watering can in there and make sure the water level's up. So there's that.
Something else to touch on with that as well is every once in a while lift it, dump the water, and put fresh water in. You're reoxygenating that water, and that water is sitting there with organic material in it. There's nothing moving it, and you'll start developing an algae bloom.
Ooh, okay.
So always dump it out, and you can. I do not recommend it at all. Do not fertilize plants that are propagating in just water because the fertilizer just sits in the water and that'll cause a severe algae bloom.
Very good point.
Yeah, so don't fertilize those, and every week, 2 weeks, whatever you feel like, just a little bit of fresh water, some cold water straight from the tap, stick the bulb back in, your plant will thank you for it.
Perfect. Okay, so that's the water method. Let's talk about the soil method. Should you be adding a little bit of fertilizer to your watering when you're doing the soil work?
So I did last year with my amaryllis.
Okay, yeah.
I fertilized, so especially the amaryllis, like that kit there.
Yeah. I wonder what's in here. I haven't actually opened this.
So it should be a pot, a coconut coir, puck, and a bulb. Yep.
Big, but look at the roots on that thing, hey?
That one looks better than mine here.
Yeah, nice pot.
Yep.
Like a little saucer, yeah.
And a puck.
Yeah.
So
that expands.
Yep, exactly. The instructions will be there. You put it in something, pull the water in, it expands, you break it up. You got a growing medium.
Yeah.
That's coconut coir. There might be some peat-based ones. Doesn't matter. Potato. The point of the fact is that they are totally new. They're not even a living soil, right? They're totally neutral. There's no goodness per se. So I absolutely fertilized mine. Now I used an organic houseplant fertilizer.
All purpose?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, just a general houseplant fertilizer. I made sure that the soil was wet, but not saturated.
Okay.
Let it dry out. But here's the thing as well. Again, it's cocoa coir. It's sitting, it's next to grow lights. It's actively growing, so it's drinking a lot of water to get those leaves up. It's cocoa coir, so it holds moisture, but it also loses moisture real quick. And it's minus 20. I've got forced air pumping through my house, and that's drying it out too. So I think I was watering maybe every other day, maybe every third day. So I just watered this morning, and if I do the soil test, you can see it's damp, but it's not mud.
Yeah.
And that got watered this morning when I brought it in. I lifted it out the bag, poured some water on it, and that's how dry it is from being in, like this side is basically dry.
Yeah.
And that's how fast it's dried out, being in the podcast studio.
Yeah. So again, you can't just say, oh, you have to water this every Monday.
Yeah.
You really have to keep an eye on it throughout the season.
Yeah, it's not a house plant where you can get away with watering them, once a week, once every 10 days, maybe twice a week. Really keep an eye, because I think that might have been what stunted some people last year is, they don't realize, oh, this one's actively, because it's so, dealing with plants is so much fun. People are like, oh, what do I do with my houseplants? We're like, we're going into winter, they're going dormant, they need less water and less fertilizer. My amaryllis is a houseplant, yes, but it needs more water and more fertilizer.
More blankets and less blankets.
Exactly. So I understand everything that we hit people with. It always sounds like, here's some information. Now, please disregard that information and use this information.
That's how we started this podcast.
Exactly.
Because there's too much information out there, right? Let's talk about these gift sets too, though, because I don't know for sure, but something tells me that there's not really good drainage in this one. And I know sometimes with crocus, you can really cluster when you plant them. And so I have seen some gift sets where it's kind of in a nice little glass bowl, but it doesn't really have great drainage in the bottom. So when we're looking at watering these ones, what should we be worried about? Should we let them dry out a little bit more to avoid water sitting?
And what I always do right now I'm tied back into last week. I'm looking after some plants for somebody right now, and they planted them directly into a cover pot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I need to fix that. Now, what I like to do, my first time doing it, so roughly I have an idea kind of soil it's in, how the soil looks, the depth of the pot, but I'll pour water in. I'll water them. I'll let them sit for a day, so it's not super muddy on the top. It's not that real fresh watered. And then I'll take something like a chopstick and I'll stick it in. Like when you test meat or cake to see if it's done.
Yeah.
And I'll stick it in. I'll let it sit, and then I'll bring it out, and you can kind of see on the chopstick where the soil is.
Oh, cool.
So it'll stick to it. Now you're pushing it in and pulling it out, so it's not an exact science. So you have to leave it in there for a little bit. And I go, oh great. It watered it well, but it didn't the bottom isn't coming out muddy. Mm-hmm. So I know that the water isn't sitting there. So then I keep an eye on the top, and I go, okay, that plant needed, 2 seconds with the watering can. That's what I'm giving it next time. I can keep it alive and healthy until I can get it in a better pot with some fresh soil and move on from there.
Okay, good tip.
Yeah.
Okay, next up is deadheading finished blooms. I know we talk about this all the time in the active growing season outside, so spring and summer. But same kind of deal with your winter bulbs. And I know you mentioned it at the beginning of this when you were talking about deadheading your amaryllis. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about that. So deadheading your amaryllis, you want to wait till the bloom is just that, like, it's kind of like a lily. Those, like, what are those little dangly bits?
The dangly bits on the inside?
Yeah.
The stamen and pistils?
There you go. Science. Yeah. Science bits. So you'll start to see them droop. You'll see the petals sort of become wrinkly.
Yeah.
So you can just take that off.
Really, honestly, what it is when it is no longer aesthetically viable to you.
Ooh, I like that.
So there's no rhyme or reason behind it. We've talked about this not very often because it's not done frequently, but live heading. Yeah. Okay. All you're doing is just taking the plant. You're like, nope, you're not spending your energy flowering now. That kind of defeats the purpose of an amaryllis. But the moment you're like, oh, that's ugly. Yeah. Get rid of that head.
Nice.
Like, just see you later.
Will that produce more?
No. On some perennials it does. On bulbs, I genuinely can't think of one off the top of my head. There may be some out there, but I can't think of one. Even in the garden, where when you take the head off, a daffodil doesn't put another one out. Mm-hmm. It's one and done. But, so if you're not planning on keeping your amaryllis, okay, there's no amaryllis challenge, you want the nice red bulb for your Christmas dinner, your New Year's, and then you're like, see you later, well, off you go to the compost.
Yeah.
Who cares? Don't deadhead it. But if you're trying to keep your bulb alive in your garden, it's the same thing. Cut that head off, because now my plant, instead of sending all of the energy to produce seeds, I've tricked it. I've said, oh, you can't produce seeds this year. So the plant goes, oh no, I need to keep myself as healthy as possible so I can grow next year and make seeds. So that's why you do it, and that's why you'll get better foliage and stronger leaves, so it can get the energy to store it. Because these are basically little energy storage cells.
Yeah.
They're basically little batteries.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, same kind of deal with daffodils. What am I saying? Paper whites.
I call them daffodils.
Paper yellows.
And those are the white ones, right?
Yeah. We're so sorry if we're confusing you. But same kind of deal with these. You'll see the flowers sort of tend to fade. But here's what I don't understand. Do you deadhead up here, or do you deadhead down closer to the soil?
Again, for ones like that, where it aesthetically pleases you.
Okay.
I don't like seeing a stupid stalk sitting out with no flower on it.
Even if it's green?
The thing is, it goes brown really quick.
Oh, it does, okay.
So then, how many times are you going to cut it back? So the moment, like you said, it comes up and you get 5 or 6 of those little flowers clustered on the top. They all die back, or 4 of them do. You're like, whatever, it's ugly, I don't like it. I always trace it back till it's nice and tight to a leaf and just snip it back there.
Okay.
And then it's gone, and I leave the foliage.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, hyacinth is a bit of a weird one because it's like one bulb, one flower, right?
Yep.
Sometimes I think you can get 2, can't you? Or is it literally just 1 and 1?
I've never seen one produce 2. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. All of these are 1 and 1.
Oh, they're all 1 and 1.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So these ones, when you are deadheading, same kind of thing. Will all the green leaves sort of brown quickly once the flower's gone?
No, the leaves should stick around.
So that's the same one. So you take the stalk right down towards the leaf, and
Yep.
then you can enjoy the leaves a
Yep.
little bit more.
Exactly. As long as the leaves are green, they're photosynthesizing. If they're photosynthesizing, they're putting energy back into the bulb. That's going to help it for next year.
Yeah.
So again, if it's one and done, and there's no shame in that, the reason you challenged me with the poinsettia is because I admitted that last year all of my poinsettias were 1 and done.
Yeah.
They got me through the season. I said, see ya, and you were like aghast that I would throw away a poinsettia. So now I've got a colossal poinsettia
Yeah.
living in my house.
Oh, yeah.
Which isn't going to turn red because I didn't bother putting it into the darker area and moving it and stuff like that. So it's just going to be a very large green plant. I like the hyacinth leaf. I actually prefer the hyacinth leaf to a paperwhite leaf.
Yeah. They're really they're so interesting because they're flat. They kind of remind me of like an iris leaf a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Like
But they look strong, and it's a really pleasing green. Right? They've just got that. They're not too big. They're not too short. They're nice and strong. They've got that, like almost like a bowl shape, especially when you've taken the flower out.
Yeah.
So they've got an interesting structure. I find paper whites without the flower, it just kind of looks like a bowl of grass. Ooh. It's just kind of
you might fool a cat.
Yeah. But they're just long. Yeah. Where that has structure. The amaryllis had structure.
Yeah.
So, but again, I'm not knocking it. There'll be other people that are like, oh, amaryllis are too big and showy. I don't like them. I love my paper whites. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to aesthetic.
So say fragrance-wise, I've always wondered this. If, say, the fragrance of a hyacinth is a bit too strong for you, can you deadhead or live head some of the flowers to reduce the fragrance?
I mean, yes, but it's going to look silly.
Will it? Think. What if you start from the bottom and it just looks like a little poof? Like a poodle.
I mean,
I can... Like poof. He's like, he's got poof.
Okay, Brandy, hyacinth challenge for you.
Oh my God, stop!
There you go. I want you to bonsai a hyacinth flower to be, in your words, a little poof. Yeah.
Okay, challenge accepted. I won't grow it, but I'll take it from the houseplant department.
You know what? I never challenged you to grow it. Touche.
Okay, challenge accepted though. Once they come in, I will do that, and then I'll bring it on the podcast.
I am so excited. So My answer is yes, I guess you can. I have never seen it, nor been requested to do it.
The answer is let's find out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll do it so you don't have to.
Or you might want to.
Exactly.
It's cool.
I am so excited.
Okay, next up, our final one, number 8, is that end of season care. So let's just go over a recap because we talked a lot of stuff. But let's go over the recap of what you did specifically with your amaryllis, which I assume you can pretty much do with everything that we have on this table.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Except for I guess even the one that you've grown in water,
yep.
It's the same kind of deal. Okay, so let's go over the steps to do that, to do your own amaryllis challenge, your own hyacinth challenge.
So what I did is, and this I noticed, so once this had grown,
yes,
okay, and I deadheaded it, the amount of water it required changed like that.
Mm-hmm.
It went from needing to be watered every 2 or 3 days. It became a houseplant.
Yeah.
It really did. Like if you came into my house and I didn't tell you what it was, you would just think it was some weird houseplant because it was just foliage. It was no longer actively growing. It had grown, so now it was just sitting there. Made sure I kept the light on it. And then I just let it do its thing. Mm-hmm. I just let it slowly die back. And that's, just treat it like a regular house plant. I know some people jump the gun, and I think this happens to people. Well, why don't my tulips come back every year? And they have the tulip, and it's got the beautiful tulip flower, and the flower dies, and they cut the whole thing down to the ground. Well, you've stopped any photosynthesis. Mm-hmm. It's not going to send up any more leaves. It's done. Now it doesn't have the energy, so often when you deadhead it, those leaves will be up for another month, 2 months, depending, maybe longer. So really, you just want to keep it till the leaves die on their own. Then, what I did with my amaryllis, like I said, I made sure it had a good drink, let it dry out completely. The moment that soil was completely dry to touch, did the finger check, looked all around, it was good. Tested weight-wise, I knew it was dry, put it in a paper bag, put another paper bag over the top, put it downstairs in a very cool, pitch black spot in my basement. The most light it's going to see is when we turn on the light to do laundry.
Yeah, well, it's in the pot, by the way.
Yeah, it stayed in the pot. Brought it out this year, lifted it out of the pot, beautiful roots, put it into a bigger pot, a little bit of fresh soil around it, and now we wait. And that's it. The aftercare, unbelievable. Because here's the thing too, the aftercare, there's no pressure.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're trying to get your flower for Christmas, you're like, it's the 23rd. Yeah. What are you doing? But after, when it's done, you're like, I'm just enjoying this now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, this is awesome because I hope that you listening will take on your own winter bulb challenge, whether it's with amaryllis or a hyacinth. Maybe you'll join me in the poof challenge. We have paper whites, a paper white challenge. We have crocus challenge. Maybe you want a little spring flower.
And here's the thing as well, you don't have to do them for Christmas. Mm-hmm. So you come into my house around Christmas, New Year's. We've got a bright red, huge poinsettia. We've got a bright red amaryllis. I've got a tree covered in lights. And I don't even go hog wild for decorations. My Christmas cactus were blooming off season, but there was stuff happening. In February, not so much.
Yeah.
And February is pretty bleak. There's nothing wrong. This bulb has gone through its dormancy. It's just sitting there waiting to get what it wants. Start it in January.
Yeah, that's
Have some color and fragrance in February.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to do them for Christmas. Buy a couple. Do one at Christmas. Moment the flowers are done, one and done. Throw it away, put it in the compost, whatever. Start another one, or deadhead that one and start your fresh one.
Oh, I like that.
And keep the blooms going, much like we would in a garden. They don't take a lot of work. I mean, seconds. And it's one pot. Frequently this, because it needs more water, I'm not going and filling up my watering can and watering it. I'm drinking my water and I go, one for me, one for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's it. So you don't have to rush through and get all of these done for Christmas. I think a lot of us could use a bit of color in January, February, and March.
I would love more paper yellows.
Yeah, I mean, you could do like lots of little poofs.
Poofs around the house.
I am so excited. I really am.
Well, that wraps us up for this week. If you're listening over on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, Make sure you're following us. Make sure to give us a review and tell your friends about us. We want to join this community. We want to learn more about what you're craving to learn more about. So let us know what you're interested in. Lots to look forward to. We'll catch you next week.
Bye, everyone.